Our goal as members of the Youth Advisory Council for Black Women for Wellness's Get Smart Before You Get Sexy program is to educate young Black women and girls about their reproductive justice and healthcare. The intention of this series is to broaden the idea of being a Black pregnant mother in America. According to the American Medical Student Association, the United States has the worst maternal death rate and is the only country where the maternal mortality rate has increased, doubling over the past 2 decades. Maternal mortality rates are 2 to 4 times higher among African American women than among white women, according to UNICEF. Here to speak with us today on the topic of maternal and infant mortality is Dr. Meridith Merchant. Dr. Merchant graduated with a PhD from the California School of Professional Psychology and completed her undergraduate degree at UCLA. She is the Assistant Director for Mental Health Initiatives and Inclusion at UC Santa Barbara Counseling and Psychological Services. She also serves as a faculty advisor for the iDream for Racial Health and Equity, an advocacy development network which addresses racial and ethnic disparities in African American health and works towards critical solutions to the infant mortality crisis in Los Angeles County. She has taken time out of her day today to speak with us and share her knowledge, which we appreciate very much. So let's get started. So the first question I have for you today, Dr. Merchant, is how did you first become aware of the disparities that Black women and their infants face?
Well, I first became aware of, wow, what did you ask? How did you say it?
How did you first become aware of the disparities that Black women and their infants face?
Okay, I first became aware of disparities that Black women face in actually 2 years after, 3 years after having my daughter, and attending a conference that First 5LA co-sponsored, where they showed unnatural causes, and it talked about the fact that Black college-educated women are twice as likely to have an infant die before their first birthday than a white woman who drops out of high school. And it was at that conference that I realized that my experience was part of a big epidemic in our society. It's just
wow. So my next question was going to be if you want to share anything else about your personal experience with.
Absolutely. So there's a lot that I could share. Well, where I will start is that in 2005, I was pregnant and gave birth to my daughter on June 29th, 2005, at 27 weeks of gestation, which is, the average is usually 38 to 40 weeks, and she was born at 27 weeks. She was 2 pounds, 1 ounce, and at that time, she needed to stay in the NICU to allow her lungs to mature and other parts of her body. And that ended up being a 5-month stay in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, which then was followed by a 7-month stay at home. And the day before her first birthday, on June 28th, 2006, she passed away. And to speak about what my experience is, I think the disparity, so much happened. That's a whole chapter and book and screenplay and everything else, movie. But what stands out most when I think about what I learned 2 years later is that, wow, I don't know where I would begin. But as far as infant mortality in particular, within hours of her passing away, we were asked if a officer, LAPD, needed to talk to us before we left the hospital, and us being my daughter's father and I. And he said, I need to see where you were when your daughter passed away. And I said, okay, that's fine. And he said, so we'll go with you today and we'll, see where that happened. And at that point I was like, we've been here 5 hours. I'm tired. I just want to go home. He said, oh, that's fine. That makes sense. Here's my card, and, give me a call tomorrow or maybe the next day. And when you're ready, we can come over and we can have the conversation. So we said, okay, fine. We started to leave the hospital. As we were leaving, he walked in the opposite direction to us and said, if you leave without letting us come to your house, we're not going to let you in. Had no idea what he was talking about. And we went on and went home. And when we got home, there were police surrounding both the front of my apartment building and the back of our apartment building. Neighbors came running down and said, what's going on? They've been here for hours asking what kind of mom you are and what happened. And at that point, I shared that my daughter had passed away, and the neighbor said, oh my goodness. The police officer, one of the officers then came to us and said, you know, you can't enter. And we weren't able to enter our home for, I don't know how long, because we ended up staying at a friend's house and went back 2 days later because it was quite jarring, didn't understand what was going on. And later I went to a support group for families who experienced infant loss. And in this support group, there were Black parents, there were Latino parents, there were white parents, and they were sharing their experiences. And no one had that experience that I had the day of their infant dying. And what I can chalk that up to is having lived in what is considered Baldwin Hills adjacent at that time. Some may refer to it as the jungle. But living there, my husband had locks. We were both Black people, and there had been an assumption that I had harmed my daughter, virtually killed her. And everyone else in the room, they were not asked, can we come that night to see where their child was. They did have police presence, but it was a couple of days later, and there wasn't this aggressive, let me come see what's going on. So that was my first introduction firsthand of the disparities within infant mortality. As time progressed, I started to learn more about how my experiences in the hospital with my daughter for the first 5 months of her life were many different experiences related to us being a Black family, and to the extent of her passing away from a disorder called Hirschsprung's disease, I'll stop in a second, where a portion of the intestines don't fully develop, so that an infant or person is not able to absorb nutrients effectively. So the person ends up dying from malnutrition. And this particular disorder is most commonly diagnosed among infants who are diagnosed with Down syndrome. And about a week or so into my daughter being in the NICU, a white nurse who was a substitute nurse for her came and said, has anyone told you that your daughter is funny looking? And I looked. I said, no. She said, well, I'm just saying your daughter, she seems to have features that might indicate maybe some genetic disorder. Okay. So they went on, they tested her. She did, her genetic testing did indicate that she has had Down syndrome. And the geneticist came to talk to us, and he said, she's probably really high functioning Down syndrome because she doesn't really quite look like it. Bottom line is, a white woman telling a Black woman that your baby looks funny looking is wrong. And, but having died from a disorder that's commonly diagnosed among infants who have Down syndrome, one, was a miss by the hospital. Two, she was slow to gain weight. And one of the markers for this particular disorder is to be slow to gain weight. But instead, what they kept saying is, it's common among preemies to take time to gain weight. And this is just common. And so it was a cookie cutter approach, no matter what questions I asked, bringing up, could it be Hirschsprung's? No, it's not that. This is just what happens, especially with, Black infants. It takes time for them to gain weight, and it's common. So I could go on. There were many different moments through the hospital stay and then into her death where we were treated differently. I would hands down believe because I am Black.
Wow, thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Oh, that meant a lot. That was a lot.
It was a lot.
um, no, I think it's very important for everybody to hear. Um, so thirdly, what would you say to young Black girls and women who are first becoming aware of this issue?
What I would say is one, Black women are resilient. Black people are resilient. Black men are resilient. Black binary, non-binary people are resilient. Black is resilient. So saying that to say that in spite of what the numbers and data says about Black women and Black infants and the disparities, we have a history of overcoming many different things. So despite what's going on, our power is in having the information. And secondly, is managing our stress from now forever is important. So every day that we are living, we are dealing with some kind of stress, some kind of strain, some kind of good stress, bad stress. And what I teach everyone is that our breath is our power, so that in any circumstance, whether it's being pregnant, whether it's being sexually active, whether it's just having an intimate relationship with a platonic friend or a romantic interest, it is important to be in touch with our center, our core, which is our truth. And I feel like I'm rambling and saying a lot of different things all at one time. So I'm going to slow this down and back up. What I would say is to honor your intuition in your first mind. We think that our first mind is up here in our brain, but it's really in our first brain, which is our I'm holding my center, my sacral, my belly. And we are often, as I'll say, as women, we are often conditioned to suck it up, to hold things in, to second guess our first mind, to say, well, oh, what is so-and-so going to think? Is this what I'm supposed to do? And to really start to cultivate the trust with what that first feeling is. That gut feeling is really a real feeling. That's a real thing. It's the gut brain. There's a brain in our gut that tells us what's right and what's wrong and what feels good to us. And when it comes to being a mother, which whether you choose to actively birth someone or not, those of us who have wombs, whether we use them actively or not, have a certain gift that no other human on the planet has to bring forth life. And life comes, whether it's a breath of life, whether it's a book that you're creating, whether it's a dream that you're manifesting. And as long as you are being centered on what your truth is, no matter what is coming our way, COVID, crazy, uninformed, racist caregivers, instructors, professors who just don't understand the Black tax, whatever is coming our way, we get to determine what is the temperature within our body. And if we're straight and clear with ourselves, then we're better able to respond to whatever those things that are coming our way are. That was long. That's how I feel.
Thank you. What do you think is the biggest misconception regarding Black women in health?
Ooh, that's a big one. Can I go back to the last one again? Actually, I want to add something.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so what I would also say to Black women about health is that I am privileged that my mother was always positive about pregnancy. And what I am hearing a lot and heard when I was younger and continue to hear is a lot of fear about, oh my God, when I get pregnant, I'm gonna gain weight, or it's gonna hurt to give birth, or oh my gosh, I'm gonna breastfeed and the baby's gonna take everything out of me and then my boobs are gonna sag and what's gonna happen. And I want to have more people have a positive mind and outlook about what pregnancy and birthing is. It's something that's natural. It's something that the body knows what to do, even if we don't think about it. There's a lot that talk about prenatal health care, which is important. But if you're starting to take care of yourself now and treating yourself as if you are carrying a baby, which people tend to get more careful because I'm pregnant, we need to be cultivating that kind of care and concern for our bodies and our minds and our spirits every single day, whether we're pregnant or not. So recognizing that pregnancy can be a beautiful experience, birthing can be a beautiful experience, and it's all about preparation and purpose and being mindful in every step of the way. So I'm here to dispel any myths about how awful pregnancy is, that you got to plan a C-section. If you have to have a C-section, that's one thing. But just know that your body is designed to stretch and grow and make space for this awesome human that you bring forth. And the better you are at taking care of your body and your mind and your spirit before you get there, long before you even think you're going to, the easier it will be. Okay, now I'll go to that next question.
What would you say is the biggest misconception regarding Black women's health?
I think there's so many, but what initially comes to mind is that, well, one is that Black women don't experience pain. So there's a tendency for, if a Black woman goes into the hospital and says, I'm hurting, it's like, oh, okay, you'll be okay. Or there's a tendency not to think about pain medication or to come up with different solutions. And yeah, we are really strong, but strong is overrated. Can I say that again? Strong is overrated. Strong, I have to go on a rant now. So I just have to share this because I think all women need to hear this, that strength is not defined as how much you can bear. It's also defined by how much you can say no, not right now, how much you can allow yourself to feel what you feel when you're feeling it, how much you're allowing yourself to cry. Crying is a sign of strength. It is not a sign of weakness. Crying is a sign of strength. It is not a sign of weakness. Crying is a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness. And I said it 3 times because I need you to hear, I need people to hear and know and understand that when we cry, we are releasing all that we're holding in. And when you're like this, you can't learn, you can't breathe, you can't be in a relationship, you can't think clearly. But when you're breathing and you're letting things flow, you have much more room to do all the things you want to do. So that's pain and all that. Another misconception related to reproductive health is that we don't get prenatal care. And I think people think prenatal care is only limited to if I'm going to Now I hear you.
You can hear me now? Oh, I can hear you. Okay.
Okay, that was. Huh.
Can you go back?
Sure. Start over.
Just go back to crying.
Okay. So crying is a sign of strength. And I see the sun again. Crying is a sign of strength. And another one, tears and crying are a sign of strength, contrary to popular belief. If you see a child in the grocery store, which I see often, and I'll say a Black child, I see other children and parents do this too, but say a child falls and then there's a parent that says, stop crying, stop crying. Now, if you fall and it hurts, sometimes the natural reaction is to cry. And in many ways, we are told in our culture to stop crying, to stop being sad, to stop being this and that. But if something is hurting, you need to express it and allow it so that you can then move on to the next situation. So another misconception about Black health is prenatal care. I think people say that Black people don't get prenatal care. And I think it's important to consider that prenatal care is not just about going to the hospital or seeing your physician or seeing your midwife or seeing your doula. it's also about the relationships that you're keeping throughout your birth and your pregnancy. It's about the relationships you're keeping before you're pregnant. Prenatal care is starting right this moment, whether you're thinking about having a child or not, because however that, when that sperm and that egg connect and create, it's not all of a sudden starting to be developed. It's coming into whatever those vessels are, whatever those thoughts are, whatever those feelings are being transmitted into that growing infant. So I think what could be helpful is reminding people that prenatal care is broader than meeting with the consultant or the physician and about all of the relationships that you're maintaining. Those are the first two things that come to mind when I'm thinking about that.
That's great. Next question. And I think you kind of already answered this, but how does mental health affect the physical health of mothers?
Yes, I kind of did. So I tend to see physical health as a part of mental health. I think a lot of people think about, I'm only dealing with mental health if I go see a therapist or a psychologist or a clinician. And mental health is everything. You can't separate it because everything contributes to how you're feeling. The mental health is, I'm going to repeat myself, is everything. It's what you're thinking, it's what you're eating, it's the company you keep, it's impacted by the company you keep, the music you listen to. There are certain times where there's a certain song that you might listen to and it might bring you down. That's affecting your mental health. And then there's those songs you're like, hey. And it's important to think about when you're trying to feel better, you're trying to focus on something, or you're, what am I ingesting? What am I listening to? What am I looking at on social media? What conversations am I having? Who am I allowing myself to be around? All of that impacts our mental health. So whether you can afford therapy or have insurance or whatever that is, what's most important is that you understand that the nervous system, without you even thinking about it, talking about it, opening your mouth, is looking for the answer to three questions. Am I safe? Do you like me? And am I good enough to belong? And when those three questions are answered with a yes, then a person is able to feel their whole self. You can learn, you can feel comfortable and safe where you are, you can establish healthy relationships. And that is all what we're looking for when we're trying to have a healthy mental health attitude. I encourage anyone listening to this to look up the vagus nerve, VAGUS nerve, which is related to the nervous system and what I just described. If we are creating environments where people feel liked, they feel like they belong, and they feel that they're safe, then we are creating a very healthy mental health attitude and container for everyone. So it's connected to everything.
Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit for our second to last question. How do you think the concept of weathering and generational mental health affects Black mothers and their children?
Ooh, there are books about that. There are lots of interviews and movies, not a lot, but weathering is what I was talking about earlier, that we are not just who we are in this moment, we are where we have been and who we come from. And we have a history of pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps. We are told to no pain, no gain. We are told, the strong, just keep going, stop crying. All of that impacts and is related to the weathering effect. And I can't say it enough that it's important to recognize that we do have that strength and that history and that strength and that history running through our genetics and in our bodies. But also with that, we have a lot of heaviness and pain. And if we're not allowing ourselves in this now moment to create and cultivate those patterns and practices that help us to refuel ourselves and to what I say and learn and practice in one of my energetic healing communities is that we need to give from our overflow instead of running on empty. It's okay, what do I need to do to fill my cup so that once my cup is full, then I can offer you more, as opposed to, ooh, girl, I'm tired. Okay, but I'm gonna be there for you because I said I was gonna be there and I don't have any, but I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that. And then we have nothing to give to ourselves or anyone else. So with respect to the weathering effect is acknowledging that we're often already coming from a what some would see as a deficit model, but looking at that as our resilience, but not letting that resilience take away from the fact that we still owe it to ourselves to care for ourselves. That doesn't have to be a massage. It doesn't have to be things that people say cost a lot of money. It comes with learning how to say no and not right now. And I said that before, I'm saying it again so people will remember. And not being unapologetic about taking care of oneself, not seeing that as selfish, and remembering that the stronger you are, the healthier you are, the more balanced you are, the better you are able to help those that we're always trying to help outside of ourselves.
I like that. Fill your cup first, like on the plane when they say put on your mask first before you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so this is our very last question. How can we support Black mothers in general? So from an advocacy perspective, what can the people watching this do?
Woo. From an advocacy perspective, what can people do to help Black mothers? The first vision I have is to honor the sacredness of mothering. And so I'm thinking right just then, I immediately thought of a pregnant woman and honoring what used to happen in the old days where, you know, if you see a pregnant woman waiting for the restroom, you allow them to go before you. Or you see, you know, you just honor that part of the life cycle. As far as mothers, there's so much we could do for moms. I think it's acknowledging that mothers inherently, mothers, whether you're actively mothering, thinking about mothering, finished mothering, you're always mothering. Mothering is about nurturing, and we're constantly nurturing others. I think what can be helpful to mothers is reminding them that they need to have permission, give themselves permission to take care of themselves. That we all have an opportunity to mother that little person inside, whether you are a woman, a man, a non-binary person. Look at yourself as finding ways to mother that child within. And because we tend to be more gentle with children, we tend to be mindful of what we feed them and what they're exposed to and how they're treated. And as we grow, we often start to loosen those boundaries for ourselves. And sometimes it takes looking within and caring for that child within. And if you are aware of what you need, you'll be better able to give that to those Black mothers that we're thinking about.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Merchant. And for everyone watching, click the link up in our bio for more information on our future events and for more information on this topic. Okay. Let me just stop recording.